We're going to get started with hour 2. So let's dive into error handling, which at the moment is something our application doesn't have. If we were to make this kind of error, now fortunately this person's running this locally, we can see this site is not live on the internet. And let's say we accidentally put in the incorrect name of our server, what's going to happen with that page? We try and connect to a database and we put in the wrong server address. What are we seeing here? An error, but what information does that error include? It actually includes the name of the server that the user entered in their code, right? So not only does the page not look too good, but we've potentially given away confidential information, right? So errors happen all the time in our applications. So this could be one of them. We as a developer put in an invalid path, invalid credential. That would be one possibility. What else could go wrong? It could be anything. Could be our fault. Could be somebody else being the cause. What other things can go wrong in a web application? What could cause errors?
The user is literally actually trying to break something.
Okay, so we've got somebody trying to enter invalid data, either deliberately or accidentally, right? They give us data that's valid to them, but that our application isn't set up to handle because we didn't expect. So that would be one kind of problem. What else can happen? Don't. Which of these is the most common? 404, right? So that one's pretty easy. And on an Apache server, it's even easier. Right? So if I pull up athletes, all I have to do, because Apache's case sensitive, is capitalize one letter in my URL. What am I going to get? Right? This is the default Apache 404 error page. Okay? Not really what we want to show our users. Okay? In addition, we have these other, so we could have authorization required, bad request, among many others. Okay? So we need to trap for this. What should happen when I do this? So I've either mistyped it or even just put in a capital, and there's no way, I mean, I know as the developer, I know this is an Apache server, it's case sensitive, but how does our user know this, right? They don't know whether our server's case sensitive or not. So what should I get instead of this result? What should we show users?
An error page that can redirect to the main page.
Okay, so it would be better off, and this is part of the requirement, if I do this in my assignment, if I put in a capital A, we should give the user this, right? A 404 page that's styled like the rest of our site and that contains, you know, our navigation so we can get them back somewhere else. This is what you get on Apache by default. So we're going to certainly want to deal with 404 errors. Okay. So we can get bad data from users, either accidentally or on purpose, if they're trying to hack or break our site. We certainly can get 400 errors, 404 being the most common. What other kinds of things could go wrong in our applications? What other errors do you experience as an end user on a website from time to time?
Request timed out.
Okay, we might have timeout issues.
Latency.
Latency, yep. And that can be anywhere, right? It could be on the server itself, but it could also be at any stop along the way between your internet service provider and the server. So we're here at Georgian, you know, if I want to load Google's website.
That just came right through.
Right? There's probably a whole bunch of stops along the way my request took from Georgian's IP out to Google server. So if any one of those stops goes down or there's latency or delay, we might time out, right? And that's something that we can't control. We can't prevent that. But it could even be on our own host, right? They've had to restart the server, or some process locked, or another website on the server has been compromised. There could be a software patch that needed to be installed. Typically, they'll do those overnight in the middle of the night, but maybe someone's trying to access our website at that time. We don't know. Okay? So we could get timeouts. We could have these things happen that are beyond our control, but we should prepare ourselves for sure. The other thing that can happen is we can make syntax errors, right? Or we can make logical errors in our code that will generate errors. So syntax errors we could try to prevent by doing good testing, but certainly we can make logical errors that suddenly we call functions or we do things and we break our own applications. So we never want to give users this or something like this. Okay. So much like with a 404 error, how we're better off with this, what should we do in the case of something like this? What should we show the user, and what else should we be doing if something breaks in the application? Either because we've made a coding error or we've gotten some bad data. What should the user see and what should we do?
Well, the user should kind of probably get something similar to the 404 page that was built where they can redirect. And then maybe some way to contact the company or something.
Right, okay. You've got those are the two things. One is we're going to want a generic error page. So anything else goes wrong that isn't a 404, we'll take the user off to a page that looks pretty much like this one. Okay. We don't want to show them the error messages because we might be giving away part of our code or sensitive information. It also doesn't look very good, right? It looks like the site wasn't built by a professional. Because even professional, well-built sites at some point or other will crash. Even if it's not a coding problem, even if it's a timeout, right? We should show the user something more along these lines whenever any error happens. The other thing is, not only do we want, from the end user perspective, do we want to give them a friendly error page when we can, we also want some way of keeping track. So we basically have two options. First thing we could do is we could log the error. Now we could try and write it to the database, but that might not work because the error might be we can't connect to our database. In which case logging the error in the database is just going to generate another error. We could try to write it to a log file. We could write the error to a text file, and that's a common thing many developers like to do, is let's write it in a text file. I find an easier way that I like to be notified. Rather than have the user and user contact me, what could I do that would be even more proactive? Certainly that would work to give them a way to contact us.
Maybe part of the error page is to send you an email or some kind of contact with
That's my preferred method. Have it send an email with information about the error right to me. Okay? You look really good when your client calls you or emails you and says, oh, my users are saying I got an error on the website, or my users called and said they got an error, and you say, oh, I know, I already fixed it. Okay? So all of my applications are set up. Just freeze for a second. Let me show you how I would do this. I'll see if I can break one of my applications. So we did this actually at the end of last week. We looked at encrypting we looked at how to very quickly encode that ID number so the user couldn't change it. So I did something similar here. We had a quick look at it last week. Now, I don't think this will direct me to a friendly error page. It should. So if I try and change that encoded ID, well, I get a blank page. If I look in my inbox, let's see. All of my applications are set to email me the errors. So here's an error. Cannot find one of the tables in my query. It shows me the query string, so I know what page the user was looking at, and I can actually see what record they were looking at. I can see the function that generated the error, and I can see exactly what page name. So I've got lots of information, so I know where to look. I know what error happened, what page it happened on, and what record the user was looking at. So every morning I wake up and I get these in my inbox. Most of them are garbage errors, and many times I can tell they're caused by hackers. So when I see people try SQL injection in the URL, my error code traps it and it sends those messages to me. Okay. When I used to do work for Walmart, I'd get like 30 of these at 3 o'clock in the morning every single night in my inbox. And I could see people putting in SQL commands like drop table customers, delete star from orders. I'd see the SQL injection attempts in my emails.
Can you store the IP address of the person?
Yep, you could also record their IP address if you wanted to. You could send yourself that. Okay, so it's a good idea to be aware of these things. It makes debugging easier if they come to your inbox. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to apply a whole bunch of these techniques to our in-class application for error handling, 404, friendly error page, sending emails to ourselves. The other friend that we have, much like you do in Java with PHP, the other thing we have is try-catch, right? So we'll try and execute a block of code, and if it doesn't work, we can handle that error, send ourselves an email, and take the user off to an error page if anything unexpected happens. There's a one limit with PHP try-catch. It won't catch syntax errors. So if you leave out a semicolon, it's still going to crash. Okay, so you still have to we still have to test our code really carefully, because it won't test if we miss a bracket or quote or semicolon. Those things are still going to generate errors. The catch blocks in PHP are designed for execution errors. It's not designed as a syntax checker.
Only uncheck it.
Pardon?
Only the uncheck it.
That's right. Okay. Okay, so what we want to do, let's make a copy of our Lesson 8 application. I'm going to copy it into Lesson 9. You can grab the solution off Blackboard if you don't have it. Or you can just take your files from last week. I'm just going to take a copy of my files from last week. So I'm going to grab all my files. We'll dump them in a Lesson 9 folder for today.
Lesson 8, right?
You know what? Lesson 7 is the mid. So I think in terms of weeks, it's week 9. So I'm going to go with. There's basically no Lesson 7 because that was midterm. And if you're grabbing my files off of Blackboard, you'll need to open up the db.php file and put in your own credentials. So I've uploaded everything. I'm just going to make sure I can now go into Lesson 9 and things still work. So I can still list, add. Okay, so now I've just got an exact duplicate. So the first thing let's deal with, it's quite simple. The first thing we'll deal with is this. Let's get rid of that and replace it with a proper 404 page. Okay. So let's make a new PHP page for today. and I'm going to save it in my lesson 9 folder. And we'll just call it 404.php. I'm going to take out all of these HTML tags because these tags will come from 2 other files. What other files do we want to link in here that will contain all of the HTML tags? Yeah, we'll add header at the top, we'll add footer at the bottom. Header has these tags, and footer has those. So I'll get rid of them all. Let's include our header. And we'll include our footer. And as we said last week, we could use require or require once, include once. They'll all basically do the same thing and link to those files. So we'll just put a paragraph in the middle. I'll give it a bootstrap class. The class called well gives it a gray background with rounded corners. So you can put in any kind of message indicating the page is not found. You don't have to copy my text, it doesn't matter. So we don't need any of the HTML tags at top or bottom. Pretty simple. So upload this page to the server. Now, it doesn't get called automatically. Once we upload the page, if we try and go to a URL that doesn't exist, it's not going to automatically load our 404. We have to do a little bit of configuration, and I'll show you how to do that next. Okay? So the first step is building a 404 page. Step 1, let's build and upload our 404. Whoops. We're almost there. What do I need to do? What did I miss?
OB start.
Right, we need OB start and OB flush. So we'll call OB start. And flush. Can anybody connect to the server right now?
I'm actually getting a host does not exist. Apparently.
Host does not exist.
Maybe they went bankrupt. They shut down.
No. The site loads in the browser, their server's up. It's our connectivity to the server. Okay. Anyway, notice even though we have a page called 404, if I try and go to this one with a capital A, we still get the server's 404 page. So we need to do some configuration. So on an Apache web server, there's a file we can use to set some configuration values. So the file is called an htaccess file. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create that file. It's basically just a text document with a strange extension. And we need to set it up so that when a 404 error code is generated on the server, we want to tell it to redirect the user to our 404 page. So I'll show you how to do this. I'm just going to keep trying to connect to the server. We may have to wait a bit before we can upload. Okay. So in my code editor, I'm going to choose File, choose New JavaScript File. This isn't a JavaScript file. So what I'm going to do is click File and Save As. And down here where it says Save As Type, I'm going to change this to All Files because I need to use a different extension that the code editor doesn't recognize. The file name is .htaccess. So this is a Unix file. There's nothing before the dot. If you're working on a Mac, you won't actually see this file in your file system. Mac OS doesn't. It will exist, but you won't be able to see it in Finder. Mac doesn't know how to make sense of this file. It's a Unix file. So we'll just create the blank file. So the file name is .htaccess, and make sure you've said Save As Type. So it doesn't have another extension on the end. So now it says .htaccess. In my Windows directory, notice here, it's just .htaccess. There's no additional extension. So here's what we want to lay out in here. We want to specify the error document 404. So when the web server generates a 404 error code, we then just put in the full URL to our 404 page. So that's my path. Whoops, I left out COMP1006. So you put in whatever the path is to your 404 error page. So this will tell the server, if you get an error with the code 404, redirect the user to that URL. And then we just save the file. Now, unfortunately, until we can connect to the server, we're not going to be able to try this out. You wired, Austin?
No.
Wireless?
No wireless goes out.
What's it called? Just .htx.
Just .ht access only.
No cigarette.
Yeah, it's done. I think it's on
I thought we went everybody, yes, I know. Only one at a time.
That's right. Okay, Austin, if you were able to connect, let me put in so.
I just connected now.
Did your HT access upload?
No.
Oh, it didn't upload.
No, I just went to go and mouse and I over it.
Okay, well, we'll just have to hope we can get connected. We can do some other things in the meantime.
So is this going to be our lab 3? Richard, is this going to be our lab 3?
Error handling will be lab 3, yes. Okay, well. We'll see if our connection comes back at some point. It often does at some stage. So there's our 404. That should be all we need to do. Build the 404 page, create the HT access file, and point our 404 error page to that URL. So hopefully we'll get a chance to upload this before we get out of here. One of the other big error handling techniques is something we're already using, which is, if I open up, say, let's see, our save page. Yeah, let me open that too. So in our database.php, we've already enabled the PDO debugging. So we did that right from week 2. From when we started connecting to the database, we enabled that. So having that is good because this will let us trap any errors in our database. We also are using bound parameters, which helps prevent SQL injection and make sure that any values we're sending to our SQL commands are the right type of data and the right size. Okay, when I've taught the course before, I never actually showed my students this line and using bound parameters until this class. And I decided for you guys made sense, we would just do it the right way from the beginning. So 2 of the error handling techniques that have used to be part of this lesson are things we've been doing right from the beginning, really. So we sort of have 4 tools at our disposal. We've got the 404 page, we've got bound parameters, we have the PDO debugging. The one other thing we have available to us is try and catch. So the other thing we want to do is build a general error page that will be similar to our 404 page. And anytime we have an error, we'll add try catch blocks. We can catch the error, we can email ourselves information about the error, and we can show the user our generic error page rather than showing them an error message. So what I'm going to do, if we go to our 404 page, click File and Save As, and I'll just call this error.php. And I'll just change the message. So just some error, letting them know, yep, we recognize there's a problem. You don't have to report it. We're already doing the error tracking and we will deal with the issue. right? Because that also gives our end users confidence that even if something broke, it'll get taken care of. If we use site and we just see a bunch of error messages, it's an application or a site we're probably not likely to come back to. So we'll save that as error.php. Again, you don't have to copy my text exactly. Doesn't really matter what goes on here. Oh. Quick, how fast can I upload before it dies? Okay, so now if I refresh this, oh, I haven't uploaded my htaccess. So now htaccess interprets that 404 and redirects. If I go to ABC, 1, 2, 3, I'll make sure it keeps me on the 404 page. So this is something in your assignment I will do. I'll click on your link, I'll load your assignment, and then I'll type in the name of a page which doesn't exist, and I'll want to make sure I get a proper 404 page and not the server-generated one. Right? I still get your style sheet and your header and footer. Pretty simple. There's no real processing here, just setting up the htaccess file. So our general error page will look similar. Right? There's what we should get if anything happens in our try-catch. We should get this rather than seeing the error. So we should go back to the pages here, our list page, our athlete page, as well as our page that does the save and does the delete. We want to add try-catch blocks to each of these. Okay? Then I'll deliberately make a typo in my code and we'll make sure that the try-catch is running. Any questions so far, or everybody okay? Okay. So I want to start on our athletes page. So I'm going to open that up. So what I want basically is pretty much all of this from when we try to connect and disconnect, this whole section in green, we should probably wrap in a try-catch block. Right? We're going to try to connect, run the query, and output the results, but if anything goes wrong, we want to handle that error and take the user off to our error page and send ourselves an email. Okay? So I'm going to highlight that whole section. I'm just going to hit Tab to indent it. You don't have to, it just makes the code more readable. So here, we're going to try. And open a curly bracket. We're going to try to execute all of that code right down to disconnect. And then I need to close the curly bracket.
Should you put con equals null and finally? So that way we close the connection even if there's null.
Yes, we could do that. Except we're going to redirect in the catch block to the error page. I'm not sure if
We can.
yeah, the finally won't run. So we're going to catch. So if an error happens, we're going to catch an exception. Whoops. Notice it's blue, it's recognized as a PHP keyword. I'll just give it a variable called E. E standing for exception. So if an error happens, we'll catch that error. So we're going to want to do a few things with that error. So the first thing will be email ourselves the error details. So we'll use the mail function. Put in your student email address. Don't put in mine. I won't be happy if you start spamming me. Put in a subject, and then for the message, I'll just use my exception variable E. That contains all the information about what happened. So we'll send ourselves that message. We'll redirect the user off to the error page. Now, right now, there's no way to generate that try-catch because our code actually works. So I want to break the code so we can try to trigger our catch block and see how it works. So the simplest way to do this would be I could just capitalize a letter in the table because our server's it's a Linux server, so it's case sensitive. So that'll break it. So go to your query and change one of the letters so that it's a capital, because in our database that table name should be all lowercase. So now we'll save that change, and then let's upload this page and refresh it, see what happens. Okay, so I've got try starting above the require once. I've changed the name of my table, and then I've added this code in green at the bottom after con equals null. Darcy?
Where did you add the opening PHP tag for that?
It was already here. The PHP tag was already open.
Okay.
So I just put this right before we tried to connect is where I opened the try. So the PHP tag was already here from last week, right at the very top.
Can you see your catch one more time?
Sure. I guess I'll put in a comment. Whoa, the generic error page.
Don't you want to close the connection before meeting?
The thing is, the connection, it may not have connected, so we might generate another error. If the connection failed, if that's where we got the error, so because it could be that the connection attempt times out, right? So you could try, but that may generate yet another error. So I'm going to upload the athletes page. I'm going to try to upload the athletes page.
Are you on your laptop? There's another way too, is if you hotspot your phone.
Yeah, I could try it. I could try that.
Yeah.
Huh. Can I use your phone?
No.
Got some weird stuff on there that you.
Yeah, okay, we could hotspot. The phone's not a bad idea.
Thanks.
Open a PHP tag here.
So, let's have a look at the lab requirements. Okay. So your lab is due tomorrow night. Here's what I want you to do for it. Okay. What I want you to do is implement error handling, the techniques we've gone through today, in assignment 1. So whatever site you gave me for assignment 1, I want you to go back over wherever you've used your database and add try-catch blocks on there, where you email yourself the error message and load a generic error page. Don't email the error messages to me, I don't want them. Okay. You've already got you should have bound parameters already in your code. That was part of the requirement already. And then a 404 page. So you need a 404 page and you need an htaccess file. So in effect, you're going to resubmit assignment 1. I'm not marking the stuff you did for assignment 1. I already did that. But I'm going to check that if I can break it, do I get your error page? And if I type in an invalid URL, do I get the 404 page? Okay, so I'm going to want to see a 404, htaccess, and error page, and I'll want to see try-catch blocks in your PHP code. Okay, it's not that big of an assignment because most of your websites were only 3 pages. If you built more, if you gave me 15 pages, yes, you don't have to do it on the whole thing. Okay, just include in your submission which pages you added the try-catch to. You don't have to do it for all of them. Okay. So in assignment 2, you'll need try-catch blocks on all the pages. You'll need the 404 page, the htaccess, and the generic error handler page.
So do we hand in our address?
Yeah, so zip the whole thing again, upload it to lab 3, and again give me the links. Okay, so just repost it. Sorry, Jess? Hasn't yet. Did it upload free?
But I still have to upload everything.
I don't know if you have to lock the screen. I don't know if it's going to show up.
Yeah, I can. Here, you can hide the characters.
Okay.
Yeah, so including
Much appreciated.
No problem. I don't know what the funky characters, but hey.
So I've just, no, it's connecting.
Maybe we have to do something from Georgian.
Like from the wired?
Yeah, that's what I do. Just make sure I'm the only connection.
So now if I try and refresh my athletes page where the table name is in it with a capital A, I get the error page instead, and whether I'll get an email. We'll just have to see. Sometimes the messages come from DreamHost and sometimes they don't. I've yet to figure out why and when and why I get a message. If I don't get a message, but I see that you've coded it correctly, it was the same in the first assignment when you had to send email. I got confirmation emails in some of your assignments, not others. As long as I see the code's there and it's correct, then you get full marks for it, okay? That message doesn't seem to be coming in, but the code is there. It says I'm up to date. Okay. So we'll want these try-catch blocks. Really, they should be on, so our delete page should have it. Really up here. All of this code can go in a try-catch block. And our save page and our athlete page, they should all have this code.
Can we just use the function set error handler?
Yes, you could, if you want to. Okay, so there would be my catch on my delete page, and I'd also want a similar try-catch both on the athlete page as well as on the save athlete page. And also our validate and save registration page should also have them. So I'm going to put it there. I can basically copy that. And don't forget your curly brackets. So your try has to be inside of curly brackets, and the catch needs its own set of curly brackets. So I've added this with the try up above.
So, do we put try and catch those in pretty much every website that is left to the database?
Pretty much wherever you're connecting to the database, yes, you'd want that connection and whatever code you're doing with the database to be inside of the try block. Because that way, any errors in your SQL are handled. Any errors you have connecting to the database would also be handled. So if the database server was being restarted or there was a timeout, the try-catch would show the user this, and you'd get notified of that error. So if you have a page that's just HTML, like let's say your login page, you don't need a try-catch block on the login page. You're not doing any processing with the database or any logic there. So I would put similar code on my save page. Again, right before I connect to the database, I'll put in a try statement right before my require once. And all the way down to my last line of PHP. So that can go inside my try. Try to do all this, try to do the insert or update and redirect. And if I get an error, send myself a message that says save athlete. So I just added this below. This was the last line of our PHP block, and I've added that section below with a try up at the top. I realize I've gone past 3, but we're just about finished. I figured I'd keep you for a few extra minutes and let you go early. And same at the top of our athlete page would be our last spot. So maybe right under our header, I'll do a try and a catch. I'll indent all of this so it's more readable. We already had that bracket, so I've added this code with try up at the top. Generally, we tend to add the try catch once we're ready to start testing our application. When we're still developing it and the site's not public yet, it's easier if we leave try catch out. If we're going to make mistakes, it's easier for us to fix them if our pages crash and we just see the error messages. We don't want to see the generic error page when we're doing our testing our own work or developing. So typically try catch is one of the last things we do after the application's already built and tested. Then we'll go in and put the try catch in before we put it onto a live web server. So try catch can happen at the end of the development process. Does anybody have any questions about any of the error handling techniques we've done today? Do you think you'd have any problem doing the lab or implementing these on your assignment? If there's anything you're not sure about, please ask.
Can you just go up on this page?
Sure. So I put the try before our is set. If you put it higher, it wouldn't matter. Would still be okay if you did it even right at the top, no problem.
It will checking all the syntax errors.
It won't check syntax errors.
Only
It
for
will
the-
check operation errors, execution errors. So if I do this, it's going to show as a syntax error. The catch won't read that. It's not designed as a syntax checker. Okay? So if I do that or leave out that bracket, now I have one open and no closing bracket, the catch doesn't get that.
Only the runtime error.
That's right. Only runtime errors, not syntax errors. In some other languages, it will also catch the syntax errors, but not in PHP. Okay, so we have to do a good job testing and checking for all the syntax errors before we add try catch and publish our site and make it public. That's our responsibility.
Can you customize the exceptions, like, you know, like?
Yes. Okay, that's a very good, Yash has raised an important point. Some people, some developers would say, this is really not a good practice to catch all of the exceptions generically, that we should be trying to catch specific kinds of exceptions. There's nothing wrong with that. So for example, we could have multiple catch blocks. We could do this. We could catch a PDO exception. So that would be if something happens with the database, like mistyping the name of a table in our SQL. We could trap for particular kinds of exceptions, and many developers say you should be doing this. You should be figuring out what kind of exceptions your code in one section might throw and trapping each one specifically. If you want to do that, that's fine. In my opinion, unless your application's really large, I think that's a bit of overkill and unnecessary. If you want to, it's certainly not incorrect. And some developers would say the way I've shown you, just use try catch is inappropriate for a PHP application. There's a good deal of debate. So it's up to you to use whichever style. You have to have some form of catching exception handling. I found through the years, I've used this minimalist version with just a generic try catch. That offends some developers' sense of what's right. So if you want to have more structured exception handling, no problem, go right ahead. So this is kind of a minimal way of doing it. To my mind, it works. Other people would disagree. Okay, so you can do it however you want. Okay. So I don't think our server's come back to life. Oh, it has come back to life. So I'm just going to re-upload those pages now. So now we've got error handling on all of them, which is good.
Probably should start using it on localhost, because you know,
We might.
minutes of the class goes in.
Yeah, but then we're going to have to spend a lot of time configuring localhost every class. It's okay, we got through everything I wanted to do today. Yes, a bit delayed, we'll still get out of here. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I will put the files up on Blackboard. So you have until tomorrow to add error handling for assignment 1, and then you have until next Monday night to do the first part of assignment 2. Okay, I do have office hours, so I encourage you for both parts, start early, so if you have problems and you need help, you have time to either email me or come to office hours and get help for your assignment. If you leave it to the last minute, you won't have enough time to get help and make changes. Okay, so next week what we'll do is we're going to deal with file uploads, because you need that for part 2 of the assignment. So we're going to add on here to our athlete page, we want to add on an image upload. So when we add or edit an athlete, we can put in a picture. And then we want to generate show little thumbnails in here so that we can see the thumbnail and then click on that image and see the full thing. So we'll look at how we do that. That'll be our class for next week, and that'll help you with this part of your assignment, uploading the logo. You'll have what you need for that. Okay, so that's it for today. Thanks for sticking around a bit longer. If you have questions, I can stick around and answer them. Okay, have a good week. Okay, so we're going to get started. It's 1 o'clock. So what are we going to do today? A few different things. We're going to talk a little bit about e-commerce to start the class. We're going to look at assignment 2, which is quite a big assignment, so we're going to go through that in detail, make sure everybody understands what they're doing. And then our subject for today, what we want to work on is error handling. So we've built this application up, been building it basically since week 2. We've got our create, read, update, delete. We've got security. We've got, what did we do last week? We've got, we made our code modular. We've got authentication. We've got a style sheet. But what we haven't dealt with is what happens when things go wrong. Okay, so the goal for today's class is to give you some tools so you know when you're building a web application what kinds of problems we can check for and what are some of the things we can do to handle those problems when they happen. And sometimes those may be problems that we generated ourselves, errors or bugs in our code. It could be because users have done things with our applications we didn't expect them to do. And sometimes it can just be server, network, or technology problems where it's nobody's fault. We have an outage, something goes offline. So what do we do? That's kind of what we want to look at, and we'll have to roll all that functionality and include it in your assignment too. Okay? So before we get into that, one of the questions that I've had many students ask me over the years is, what do I need to do when I've built a website and somebody says to me, I now want to be able to sell products or sell services on my website, okay? So let's say they have an existing site and either they have a service-based business or a product-based business or maybe both, and they suddenly want to be able to sell online. There's going to be several things they're going to need to get set up, and they're going to come to us to ask them for guidance, because the average person who just runs a business is really going to have no idea what they're going to need. So there's going to be several things that they're going to need. Actually, I could probably make a list in here if I go in here somewhere, maybe in the tools and resources. So what things would somebody need?
Something like a PayPal service.
Okay, so that's going to be one thing they're going to need. PayPal is an option. Shopping cart is probably the biggest one. Okay. Where could you get it? Where would you recommend somebody, where or how would you recommend a client get a shopping cart? There's a few options. So somebody said to you, what kind of shopping cart could I get? Your choices basically come down to, you can find an existing shopping cart, either a free one or a paid one, or what would your other option be? Yeah, you could build it. Okay. Now there's a third option, which is you can find an existing shopping cart and you can customize it. Okay, so you'd have those three options, right? Use an existing one, build one from scratch, or take an existing one and then modify it. In what order, what would you think, what would the order of cost be? Which would be the cheapest? Which would be the most expensive of those options, do you think?
Customize, build your own.
Build your own is the cheapest.
You'd say build your own is the cheapest? Any other opinions? You're saying no. Which would be cheapest, do you think?
We get them open source platform like say WooCommerce, there are other portals, so we get them as a platform that has open source.
Okay, so you think getting an open source one would be cheapest?
Yeah.
Okay. I would tend to agree that finding an existing cart would probably be the cheapest because, as Anouk said, many of them are open source already. I'll show you a few of them. So WooCommerce is a popular open source cart. It's written in PHP. Although, so you can get started for free. That's one. Here's another one that's very popular, also PHP based. Now this comes in different versions. There is a free version, and then there's a very expensive paid version that has a lot more functionality. So Magento is one. So they do have an open source community edition. I don't know if they compare. The enterprise version is very expensive. It's thousands of dollars a year, but there is a free version for getting started. You can also look at a service like Shopify, which is actually a Canadian company. Probably some of you have heard of it. So their pricing is pretty inexpensive. I think it's $29 a month for their basic cart. Actually, starter plan of $14 a month. Now, if you think about this, if you were going to build one from scratch, so you were going to code it yourself, how long do you think it would take you to build a shopping cart?
Probably a lot of time.
Yeah, probably a lot of time, right? These applications, the reason they're going to be cheaper is because they come with a whole lot of features. Point of sale, storage, unlimited products, discount codes, and you can see the difference between some of the paid versions. So paid versions have things like fraud analysis, actually all of fraud analysis, gift cards, reporting, abandoned cart, meaning someone starts shopping, they put things in their cart and they leave the site. The paid versions will store their cart in a cookie, so if they come back to the site, like Amazon does this, your product is still in the cart, right? The free version or the cheaper version doesn't include those kinds of things. Real-time carrier shipping. So again, that would mean somebody could log into the cart and track their item right through your website. So the version that's $180 a month, that's included. The cheaper versions don't include some of that more advanced functionality. If you built all that stuff, would take you a long time to spec it all out, code it, test it, make sure it's all working. So these kinds of applications have been built over years by teams of developers. For you to match the kind of functionality they have, it'd be really expensive for you to go ahead and build this.
Like, can't you take the basic version and add cookies yourself for abandoned cart?
Okay, that comes to the most expensive version. The most expensive way to do this is take somebody else's code and try and change it. That takes the greatest amount of time, okay? And studies have shown that's always the most expensive option, is to customize somebody else's code. Because a lot of the time is figuring out how does it work and ripping it apart. And one of the other things I've learned when you do this is many times you add something or you change the way something works, but when it's in someone else's code, you've then broken a whole bunch of things in other places. So that gets really expensive, okay? So I would suggest, here's the question. So I would recommend you leave the third option out. Don't buy and customize. So here's the question. What I would do if I have a customer, I would try and find them a shopping cart. I'd show them several like this, and I'd say, do you like how these work? Is any one of these, does it do what you want it to do, and are you comfortable with the process and the interface and what you like about it? What do you like about it? If they say, yeah, this is going to work, I'm always going to say, this is going to get you up and running the fastest, because these are already built, and it's going to cost you the least amount of money. Okay? However, if you need something custom, the best option then is build it yourself. So a regular shopping cart doesn't work for their business model, then you're better off to just build it from scratch. I learned this the hard way once. I had a customer, they were selling photo gifts. So you buy a product online. So a regular shopping cart worked for that. The problem was they wanted the customer to then be able to upload their picture. And let's say you bought a mug, they wanted to be able to put the photo on the mug, and we had to draw the mug and let the customer place their photo on it and resize it and move it around and add text. And they wanted us to put that in the cart. The big mistake we made was we let him go and buy an existing cart that was cheap, and then we had to rip apart the cart process to put all the photo editing into it. It was very, very expensive. And every time he wanted us to change something, it took us a long time. Eventually, we built a separate site that was for photo companies only, like photography companies, and we decided we won't make that mistake again, we'll build that one from scratch. So we basically had two versions of the same website. And then once we had those two versions, every time he wanted to change, if it took me an hour to change my own code, it would take me 4 to change the shopping cart version to do the same thing. So it's much, much more time-consuming and expensive to get one of these and customize it. So that's the question you want to have with your client. Show them some carts, see if they find one they like, and if they'll use it out of the box. Like my client, the other thing he didn't want, the shopping cart, usually it has the billing page first and the shipping page second. He didn't like that. He wanted shipping first and billing second. Well, in my own cart, if I built it from scratch, that's easy to do. I just plan it that way. But all of these, they'll always have billing first. So if you want to change that process, it's a lot of work because you have to redo that whole section of their workflow. Very time consuming. Okay. So there are some great carts for free. This would probably be the best place to start. You know, and my answer to customers is, I'm happy to build it for you. It's more money for me, but I'd rather you should spend as little money as you need to. So if there's a good solution out there that's free or cheap, use that. So you need a cart. We need some kind of credit card authorization. So PayPal is one option. PayPal is a good option if somebody has a small business and they're just starting. Because with PayPal, they only take a percentage of the payment, but if they don't sell anything, there's no fee to have a PayPal account. So for a small business starting, that's a good way to get started. If the business is successful or if they're selling expensive products or services, PayPal is not a great option. Why? There's some limits with PayPal. Let's say your customer was selling a product or service that cost a few $1,000s. I wouldn't recommend they use PayPal. Why not? True, although the other companies will too. What are some of the limits with PayPal? What does the customer need in order, if you only offer PayPal on your site, what does the customer who's trying to buy a product or service have to have?
need to have a PayPal.
They have to have a PayPal account, right? Which most people do, but not everybody. So if PayPal is your only method of payment, you'll lose your customer is going to lose some sales. There'll be 10 or 20% of their customers who go to checkout and they go, oh, PayPal only? Well, I don't want a PayPal account. I'm not going to buy. So that's one problem. The second problem is, remember, where do people pay with PayPal? So you click checkout, pay with PayPal. What loads in the browser?
PayPal.
Right. You're taking the user off of your website and over to PayPal, which is never recommended to take users off of our site. Right? We want them to stay there. So PayPal is kind of the quick and dirty way. You can do it for selling small items. You can do it to get started. But customers who are selling, look, I had a customer that was selling online subscriptions, annual subscriptions to a service. They started at $2,000 per year for one user. And so they sold from one user up to 10 users. So think about how much money that is every year. They couldn't use PayPal. Why not? I mean, technically they could use PayPal. In a business sense, PayPal wasn't an option. What's the difference between PayPal and a full credit card authorization? Which is more professional? To take someone to PayPal or to have them just put in their credit card right on your site in your shopping cart? Right on your site in the shopping cart, right? So they were trying to sell their services to big businesses. To go and ask a business to spend $10,000 on an annual subscription and now go to PayPal and pay for it just didn't work for their business model. They couldn't market it that way. So they had to use a payment authorization company. Okay. Probably, actually, we can see them here. I wonder if we can search here. So one of the things your customer is going to need is either a PayPal account or, I don't know why there's no search here, or they're going to need what's called a payment gateway account. So they need to sign up with a company that does credit card authorizations. Anybody heard of any payment gateway companies or know where you could go?
American Express Payment Gateway.
There's American Express, yep. A few of the big ones. One is called Authorize.net. So this is an American company. And another popular one that's actually based in Toronto that I've used quite a bit, many of my customers have used, is Cygate.com. Okay. So your customer, you can't set this up. Your customer's business has to set up an account here. Okay. So they will do the payment, the credit card authorizations. Now these accounts are expensive. They're going to cost probably at least $50 a month just to have the account. And then they will also take a percentage of every transaction, like 3 cents a transaction or 3% per transaction. Right? So if you think about it, your customer is going to spend maybe $1,000 a year just to have an account with these guys, even if they don't sell one product. Okay. And many of the shopping carts, many of the shopping carts, they will have a whole bunch of integrations with these companies. So whatever cart you pick, if you're going to use an existing one, you want to make sure your customer gets a gateway that's already integrated with that shopping cart. Then you don't have to write the code. You just put in your customer's gateway account credentials and password, and the code to send the payments and interpret the responses is already baked into the cart. So here are some common ones. So Amazon, Stripe is another popular one. So there's a number of different gateways. So your customer needs to get one of these accounts. Chase Payment Tech is another one of the big ones. Okay, so you can see. So what I would do is once I find a cart, then I would look through the list of gateways and make sure that my customer uses one of these gateways, because that way I don't have to write the code to do the integration. It'd be already baked into the cart. If you build your own cart, you're going to have to write all the payment integration with the gateway. This is how we send payments, and this is how we interpret the response back, whether the payment was accepted or rejected. And if it was rejected, you have to show the customer an error message so they know what they did wrong, and they can try their payment again.
How come they all cost the same?
That's a fee through WooCommerce. Some are more than others, actually. Okay. So your customer needs an account with one of these companies, and it will typically take a few weeks to set up. They're not going to set one of these up in 24 or 48 hours. Okay. So we have to tell our customer they're going to have to go to one of these companies, and they're going to have to pay service fees every month, in addition to a percentage of every transaction your customer is going to have to pay. So that's the third thing. So we need, actually no. Well, we got a gateway, we've got a shopping cart. Once they have one of these, so I sign up with Authorize.net, and they check the customer's credit card payments, where does the money actually go? So Yash is a customer, he buys something worth a couple $100, he puts in his credit card on Shopify or e-commerce, we send it to Authorize.net, which says, yep, he's got this room, it charges his card. Where does the money actually go? How does your customer get the money from these guys? They just basically authorize the card, but your customer still needs their money. So how do they get it? Where does it go?
Instead of a direct deposit, or?
It'd be it is a form of direct deposit, yes. What kind of account will that money go into?
Probably a checking.
Nope. If you walk into a store and give them your credit card, where does the money go? Anybody ever worked in a retail store? Anybody have a retail job where you take credit cards? Where does the money go? Yeah, so it goes through the POS system, but ultimately the POS system what your customer needs, they have to go to their bank, and they have to get what's called an internet merchant account. Okay, right? If your customer already takes credit cards, here's what they're already going to say. They say to you every time, guaranteed. They say, "I already have a merchant account because my business, my store, I already take Visa and MasterCard. So I already have a merchant account. I don't need one for an e-commerce site." Yes, they do, because the government rules are, any credit card transactions processed online, the money has to go into a separate bank account from the regular credit card transactions as an anti-fraud mechanism. So even if your customer already takes credit cards and has an account at their bank for taking credit cards, they can't use it for their e-commerce site. They need a separate one. So they have to go to their bank and they have to set up what's called an internet merchant account. So that way, when a company like this takes the credit card, they then deposit the money in the internet merchant account of your customer. And again, those are not free. Thank you, Jesse. So the bank will charge them maybe $50, $60, $70 a month just to have the account. And the bank will also take a fee for every transaction that goes in. So just to set this all up, if you don't want to do PayPal, or your customer figures they can't do PayPal, just to set all this up, they're probably going to spend $1,000 or $2,000 every year just to have the bank account and the payment gateway, even if they never sell anything. So this is why PayPal's not a bad way to start if they don't have a lot of money or they're a small business. Say, we'll start with PayPal, and if we're successful and you're making money online, then we'll look at getting a payment gateway and doing full credit card transactions right on your own site. Now they'll need one other thing. If they're going to take credit cards in your shopping cart, they're not going to use PayPal. So you've got a shopping cart, you've got a payment gateway, you've got an internet merchant account. There's one other thing you will have to have. What do you need for security? Somebody said it. You'll need an SSL certificate. Anouk, what's an SSL certificate? Okay, so SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer. You can see it on Blackboard, right? How can you tell there's an SSL certificate on this site?
HTTPS at the top.
Because we've got the S, and what else do you see visually in the address bar? We've got that little lock here, right? I can go in and I can look at the certificate. If you're using PayPal, you don't have to have an SSL certificate because the credit cards aren't entered on your site, they're entered on PayPal's site. But if we're taking credit cards on our own site, we have to set one of these up. Okay. Now there's a bit of a process for doing this, and it's very easy to mess it up. I know because I once had a customer do it on his own and he messed it up, and I'll show you what happens. Maybe next week at the start of class, I'll show you the process of how you get an SSL certificate set up. Because it's something anybody who's building websites will need to know how to do. Our customers aren't going to do it for themselves. They're going to rely on us. If there's anything sensitive on their site, it'll be our job to set up the SSL certificate with HTTPS. So we need all 4 of these things if someone wants to sell online. So if they're going to use PayPal, they just need a cart. But if they're going to do the full payments and credit card right on our own site, they need a cart, they need a gateway, they need an internet merchant account, and they need SSL. So we can do the SSL and cart part. Your customer has to go and get the merchant account and the gateway account on their own. But they're not going to know any of these things, right? All I know is, hey, I got a business, I want to sell my stuff online. So they're going to be asking you, what do I do? Okay, so those are all of the pieces that you're going to need. Okay. So, oh, you guys don't have access to this little item. I made notes on this previously, which I don't think it was visible to you. So inside of the tools and resources on course documents, here are your requirements. Okay, so you can refer to this or copy that little item and file it away somewhere if you're doing any web development work, because those will be the things that the process you'll need to go through. Okay. Questions from anybody?
Once you make these, do you get someone to pen test it?
Yeah, you mean in terms of testing the payment?
Security, yeah.
Yeah, what happens is most of the gateway accounts, most of the payment gateways, they will give you, so they'll typically give you like a user ID and password, and they'll do it one of 2 ways. They'll either give you a production username and password and a testing set of credentials. So while you're testing, you can put through transactions using a different username and password, and that indicates it's testing. Or there'll be some other field when you send payments to them, there'll be some other field that indicates whether it's production, meaning live, or whether it's testing. So if you send that in the field indicating it's testing, they might even give you, here's a sample card for testing, sample card number to get an approval response, and here's a sample card number for testing to get a payment rejected response. So they generally have a sandbox. PayPal does as well. So you can send test transactions and test out both successful and unsuccessful payments. And that will be included in the documentation you get from the gateway or PayPal.
Oh, I meant something like penetration testing.
No, you're going to have to do that yourself. They're not going to give that to you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So those links are up on Blackboard for you. So let's look at assignment 2, which is also now on Blackboard in the assignments tab. So down here, Part 1 and Part 2. So the assignment counts for 25%. It will basically cover all of the things that we've done in class. So you're building out, we've been building a full-blown web application together. In class, you'll basically be building your own. Okay. So it's 2 parts. The first part is due next week. So you have 1 week to do Part 1, and then you have 2 additional weeks to do Part 2. Okay. So each time you'll need to zip up your files, give me one zip file with all the files for that part, and don't forget to give me your URLs. Okay. This is an independent assignment. You cannot do it with someone else. You cannot share your code with anybody else. Okay? If I get two projects that look the same and the code looks the same, you will have to meet with me as someone else's. You'll have to meet with me and convince me that you did the work on your own. Penalty for not getting an independent assignment is 0 on the full assignment, even if you just copy a part of it. You cannot copy or share any of it. So what you're making is what's called a content management system, or CMS. Some of you probably heard that term before. So this is basically a website builder. If any of you have used WordPress before, you're basically making your own mini version of WordPress. Okay. So the idea is you're building a site where you could give it to a customer and the customer can manage their own content. Okay. So I've given you a few sample links here, and I'll give you a walkthrough of what it will look like. Okay. Here's a sample site I've built and 2 other sites where I've used a content management system for real. Yuji, if you need to go get coffee, I won't be offended. Okay. So there's 2 parts to the site. There's a public site and a private site. Okay. So the public site has a login and register, and it has these pages. And I say pages because they look like actual web pages. Notice when I click on home, notice the URL. Goes to default.php with an ID of 1. When I click on any of the other links, notice the URL. Okay. So these look to the end user like these are different pages. Right? It's the same URL, and I'm changing the title and the content based on this ID number, right? If I just change it, I get a different page. So these aren't, I'm not creating a new PHP page, I'm just putting new records in my database. Okay? So the idea of building a site this way is we can build a website for somebody, and anytime they want to put a new page in, or get a new link in the navigation, or change the content, they don't have to call us. They can just log into their control panel. So I want to add a new page. So it saves that page here. And now notice my navigation. Right? So now there's a new link in my navigation, and when I click it, I get the content of that page. If I want to go in and edit the content, I could change the title. I can change the content. Oops. What the heck did I just do? Oh. Somebody just uploaded. That's okay. So here's my new page. So I've changed the link. So notice I get the new content and new link. So if we gave this site to somebody, they would think they're creating web pages. They're not really creating new pages, they're just putting new records in the database and we're letting them add, edit, and delete the content. So now I could go back to my list of pages and I can delete the page. And now that link goes away. Okay, so my links in the navigation are dynamic and all the content is dynamic. The other feature here is I should be able to, this has to be a logo, so this is an image. Okay, so that's an image that I created. We'll do file uploads next week. I also should be able to upload a different logo to the site if I want to. So if I want to upload a different logo, there, looks lovely. So I can replace the logo in the header. Okay. So that's the full application. You have 3 weeks to build that whole thing. So you don't have to build all of it for next week. Here's what you have to build for next week. Okay. So you need to create the control panel that has a registration page. I think everybody should know how to do that. The passwords have to be hashed. You need to make sure nothing on the registration page is left blank. You should ask for an email address and make sure that it's formatted like an email address. You can use the email as the username if you want to. It's fine. You don't have to have a separate, if you want to have a separate field for username and email, you can. If you want to use email address as username, you can do that too, whatever you like. You're also going to have to, there's a little independent learning, you've got to make sure that we can't have 2 user accounts with the same email address. So before you register a new user, you're going to have to do a select query and check whether that email address already exists in our database. And if it does, you'll have to tell the user, we already have that email and they can't sign up. So you've got to build the register page, the login page, and then the user administration. So listing of the users, editing and deleting an existing user. Okay? That's what you have to build by next week. So basically, you'll need this page that shows the user accounts, this page where I can edit a user, the delete functionality, as well as the ability to log in and register. Okay. So you don't have to do anything in terms of the content management piece with adding, editing pages, the logo, all of that. For next week, it's just the user management part. So I can sign up, I can log in, I can see the list of users, I can edit and I can delete. Okay, so you have a week to do that part. So basically, I think I've said here, items 2A to 2E for next week. Okay, so you'll need about 5 or 6, I think you'll need about 6 pages for next week. So after that, then we'll have the ability to add, edit, delete web pages, and each page needs a title and content. Okay? And so in my note, when I say page, we really just mean a record in the database. Okay, so you don't have to create new PHP files every time we create a page. You're just adding a new record into the database. Okay. All the admin pages have to be password protected. So in order to see the list of administrators, edit or delete, or to change the content at all, add, edit, delete the content, all of those pages have to be private. There also has to be a page to upload the logo, which will appear in the header, and we'll have to implement error handling, which we'll do today. Okay. So that's the admin site. So the admin site, there's two sections, right? There's the user management and the content management. So for next week, you have to do the user management part. And for the following 2 weeks, you have to do the content management part. That's the admin side. Here's the public side. The public side will have a header with the navigation bar. We did it last week in class. There'll be a footer. So in the header, the links have to come dynamically from your database, just like I showed you. So when I add a new page into the database, I should be able to go back to the public header and hit refresh, and that link should get added. If I change the link, the navigation should change. If I delete the page, that link should go away. Okay? So these links in the navigation bar, except for login and register, these links are all dynamic. Right? So from the same list as so just like we loop through them here and pulling out the titles, I'm just looping through them here and outputting those titles. So I'm just displaying that query result in a different way.
If you have like around 17 pages, does it?
Yeah, so in terms of the content, just put 5 in. Put 4 or 5 in, right? You don't have to put, I wouldn't waste time putting in 17. So then you'll have one page called default, and the content of default changes depending on the ID number on the end of it, because every page will have an ID from your database. Right, so notice again, if I just change my, so here I get page ID 3, 4 gives me different content, 5. On a real site, I've given you links to this site. This works the same way. So these links just come from the database. When I click About, it gives me that ID, and here's the dynamic content. The rest of the page is all the same, right? There's a header, there's a nav on the side, and there's a footer. If I click another link, the header, sidebar, and footer are the same. It's just this section that changes based on the ID. So now every time they want to change the content or add a new link and a new page, they can just do it themselves through the control panel. They don't have to pay me to do it. They can manage all this on their own through the database. So most websites are built this way now. We don't build them and have our clients send us updates. We give them the tools. We don't want to spend time updating the content on their site and being data entry clerks. We want to be developing applications. So we give somebody a tool so they can build it themselves. So I've given you an example of what your navigation would be like. So notice they all go to default, and we just stick on the ID on the end of each one. So you need to have at least 5 pages on the public site, 5 links with different content. Okay? I don't really care what the content is. I just used filler content here. But I have a couple of suggestions. One is build a site for yourself. Build it as a portfolio site where you have different sections about yourself. You could build this for somebody, build an actual site, either on a volunteer basis or that you might get paid for. Or you could even find a website. Here's another idea. Find a company that you do business with, a restaurant you like to eat at, where you get your hair cut, whatever. Okay? Find a business you go to that either has no website or has a really bad website, and do a better version of it. You can do it for the school project, and then you can go to them after and say, hey, I've got this, I'm working on this version, are you interested in me finishing this off and paying me for it. That would be another suggestion. So I don't really care what the content is. That's up to you. Okay, I've had students in the past take their favorite candy and redo the website of their favorite candy with information about the candy and the company. It doesn't matter to me. You know, do your favorite sports team, do your favorite restaurant, make a business up. The content doesn't matter. Okay, it's the system that counts that you're building. Okay, so build a site really about anything that you want, as long as there's 4 or 5 links and different content on each page. So the way I'm going to market, the very first thing I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll try to add a page, and I'll make sure I can't have a blank page. So I want to make sure, I guess I already went through it. So I want to make sure that when I'm done saving, I get a new link and my content shows up. Then I'll edit it, change the content, make sure that content changes, and then I'll delete it. And then I'll try changing the logo, make sure the logo changes, and then I'll put your original logo back in so that the site looks the way, I'll leave it the way I found it. Whatever things I put into the site, I'll take out at the end. Okay, so now I just go back in here and delete that. So I want you to have a site that you're proud of and that is going to help you really show what you can do when you go out on co-op, right? I want you to have 2. The one we've been building together in class each week, and then I want you also to have this one that you're proud to show off to somebody who you're going to ask for a job. And many, many students have told me that they've taken this and either built real sites for people and gotten paid. I've actually had other students who then use their content management system in other when they had to do other courses here at Georgian and later in second year. They actually kept their content management system and they built onto it, and they used it for other things when they had to do websites in other classes. Okay? So you can make up the content. Again, you'll have to do error handling. You'll also need a 404 page. So we'll look at that today. So if I do this, right, I want something like that to show up. We'll look at how do we do this. So do some basic CSS. You can make your own. You can use Bootstrap like we've been doing in class, or something else like Foundation, which is an existing CSS framework. Just make it clean. Like mine's not fancy, but it's clean enough that it looks professional. Okay. So here's how I'm going to mark you. So for the user management piece, 8 marks. So that's register, login, add, edit, delete users. So all of that, you'll get those 8 marks next week. The control panel is also 8 marks, and that's split between the user management and the content management. So 4 of those marks for user management are due next week. So next week, the first part's out of 12. So then after you've got the content management, the public website with the header and dynamic content, a couple marks for your CSS implementation, 8 marks for doing error handling, which we're going to cover today, a couple marks for commenting your code, up to 2 bonus marks for any extra functionality that you want to add, that you feel your application should have. Okay. And I will leave that up to you. If there's other things you think would make sense, you want to add, you can go ahead. One warning with this is a big project. It will take you a long time to do. You will not, so it's due on Monday nights. You won't get part 2 done if you just start it the weekend before. Okay? I've had several students do this project over the years, and I never change it because I get a lot of feedback that students say it was really big, but I learned a lot from this project, and I got to build something I could use. Typically, students say over the 3 weeks, they'll spend 20 or 30 hours. So 8 to 10 hours a week, or 7 to 10 hours a week is reasonable to build this full application. Okay? But then you should have something really great you can take out and use for your own purposes, and it should help you get a job. Okay? So what I've shown you, this is what I would consider 36 out of 36. Okay? This meets all the requirements. There's nothing extra here, but all the features I've shown you are part of the requirements. So your site should be similar to this if you want to get 100% or close to it. And many, many students get 100% on this, okay? It's all within your ability. There's nothing in here we haven't done, okay? Although you may have to adapt a few things we've learned to a couple of the requirements. The other thing I've given you, which I haven't done before, but I thought would help, what I've done is I've taken, because you can see the public site, and I've given you the link at the top. You can't get into the admin side, so I've taken screenshots of every page, and they're right here. So here's a zip file. So you can go through and see every screen, pretty much. Okay, so you should have a really clear picture of what you're doing with this. You don't have to make it look like mine. In fact, I encourage you to make it look somewhat unique. But the functionality is here so you have an idea of what you need to do. Questions? Is anything unclear? Are you unsure about any of the things I'm asking for?
The one, the page you said like we have to create it, like that we enter the title and the text you want on the page.
Yes, what about it? You're not sure how it works?
Yeah.
Okay. So you mean here when I click add page, what happens? Is this what you mean? Is this the screen you're talking about? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to create a new page. Okay. So can anybody tell me what will happen when I click save? When I click save, here's my folder on the server. Will there be a mayank.php created when I click save? No. Okay. So I'll do it. So I click save, and I click whoops. Looks like somebody is deleting my stuff. That's nice. I really appreciate that. So where does this come from? So where is that information stored when I clicked save? Where does it go?
It's in the database.
Right. Okay. So when I clicked save here, or I change it, when I click save the first time, it inserted that title and content to a record in the database. Right? Okay. So to get this link, I'd run a select query to select all of the page titles, and I echo out each one in a loop. Okay, so when I make a new page, so this is going to insert another one. So I have a table in my database called pages. So it will store the title and it will store the content. Okay. So I've inserted again. So now I'm just doing a loop. I'm selecting all of the page titles and echoing each one out in a loop. Okay, and each one is also a link. So when I click it, I get the title and I get the content. Does that make sense? Okay, so all of the content, it's all just stored, it's all just information in the database. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Yep, Ryan?
Is the administrators, is that a separate database where all the administrators are located?
Well, it would be a separate table.
Table, yeah.
Yeah, so you only have one database.
Yeah.
So basically, we'll have one table that lists the administrators. The register page will save a new record in here.
Yeah.
And then we can, so register can be public.
Okay.
Anybody can sign up as an administrator. And then edit and delete. So these pages would be private. Yeah, so you'll need a list of administrators. You'll need to make sure your password is how big? Got to be 128 characters so you can store the hash passwords. So basically you pretty much need two tables, right? One table for storing the administrators and then a separate table for storing the pages. Okay, so I will put my pages back. And notice also, I'm logged in here, so I get this control panel link, because I'm logged in. But if I log out, I get login and register the way we had them last week. Now I'm not authenticated. Okay, any other questions? I know I took quite a while to explain it. It's quite big, and I just want to make sure that I give you a really clear picture of what it is you're going to build. Okay, if there are no other questions, let's take a 10-minute break. So when we come back, we need to look at error handling because that's part of the requirements for the assignment.